Hey, Doc, you got your mute is on. There you go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can. How's it going?
It's going beautifully.
Nice.
Something happened.
Mr. Luckham, how are you today?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. How is everybody on a rainy day?
Doing okay. Doing
Good.
all right.
Good.
Excellent.
Dr. Mizrock, I've got an email I'm going to forward to you here shortly from a Mrs. DeWitt who expressed some concerns about 55 Upper Fremont, and more specifically why the fire department had no involvement on the resolution that was enacted last year for delivering garbage trucks to actually have a turnaround in that area versus the fire department not having some involvement there. So at some point, I'm going to actually take a ride in that area and kind of determine whether or not a garbage truck would also be, the same size or proximal size as a fire engine, and whether or not what's planned for the garbage truck is sufficient without additional cost to the city. But I didn't want to go and say all that in email to her just yet.
Okay. I'm very interested in that because as I mentioned last meeting, I did take a ride up there and it's a scary place. The street is too narrow, too steep, too windy, too back and forth. I mean, it's a challenging area. So I'd be happy to look into that with you and see if we could mitigate any of that.
I appreciate that. And Commissioner Luckham had given us some information a while back about the fire he responded to up there a few years back and how difficult that area was. And so I provided Mr. Witt with additional information that I can try to briefly summarize for everybody instead of reading it, point by point, just so everyone understands some of the recent effort going on in that area with our vegetation management specialists and the new homeowners in that area as well.
Yes. Fantastic.
That is going to be a really tough area, and it's not the only one in San Rafael, but it is definitely challenging.
Right.
I agree.
Wanted to show you this also.
Look at that.
That's for Eli.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Some of the language that Larry had offered for us, and got it on the document, but I'll read it later when you guys have a moment.
Okay.
Excellent.
And thank you. These are great. These are great.
Super. And of the approximately 100 that I did so far, I only know that I misspelled one name. Guess who it would be?
I can't imagine.
Not
Dr.
one of the
Mizrock.
commissioners, not one of the commissioners, right?
No, I have remade that.
Oh, okay.
I will get it to you as soon as I can.
Hi, Dave. Hi,
Everybody.
Stan.
Hey, Dave.
How's it going, everybody?
Oh, there.
I went to Larry's house and I got mugged
Ah,
in a good way.
all right. I'm next in line, Larry. I'll
All right.
let you know. Maybe next week might be better. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. This is, I will show you my latest enterprise.
Aha,
Oh, wow.
that's it.
Yep.
Very nice. T-shirt.
You're going to be
Stand up
setting up
again,
a
Larry.
store pretty soon, aren't you?
Larry, stand up again. Stand up, Larry. Where did you get that? You did that?
I did that.
Wow.
How about that?
That's
Hi,
impressive.
Tom. Is that sublimation also, Larry?
This one actually is not. It's a different. It's a heat and pressure transfer process, but it's not dye sublimation.
Okay. I need to hear more about that. We're waiting for Nadine and they'll be ready. Stan did the minutes last month and he did a super job. Do I have a volunteer that might be willing to do it today? Is that a hand, Tom? Thank you so much.
On it.
Deeply appreciated. And just, keeping it simple, the highlights, it doesn't have to be a stream of consciousness and Rand sort of endeavor. So do it like Stan did. really tight and nice. Hi, Nadine.
Here's Nadine.
Hi.
Hi.
Is there
Oh,
somewhere?
good. We are complete. Fantastic. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 4:02, so let's get started. And I'll just take roll here. Steve Mizrak, I'm here. Larry Luckham,
I'm here.
okay. Tom Weathers,
Here.
Nadine Haight,
Present.
beautiful. Dave Funkelsrud,
Present.
beautiful. Stan Burford,
I am here.
super. Thank you all for coming. Chief White, you're here.
I am here.
You're running the show and I'm deeply appreciative. So I don't think we have anyone who's entering virtually on the 669 number. Chief, do we have anyone who's called in from the community?
Let's just double check. No, not a one.
Okay, very good. Then I'm going to go directly to the approval of the minutes. Stan, once again, thank you so much for doing a really good job. And I know that you had some challenges in getting it all together. So thank you so much for doing that. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I have one correction, and that is incident photographer, not camera 50, it was photo 50, which is relatively standard in fire departments.
Okay. Anyone else?
The official closing time was 5:19 p.m.
Okay. Thank you, Stan. If there's no additions or corrections,
I'll move to approve.
Larry, so moved. Seconded.
Second.
Seconded. Dave, thank you.
Aye,
All in
aye,
favor?
aye.
Say aye. Aye. All
Aye.
opposed?
Who seconded that?
Aye.
We got Dave seconded. Because Stan, you wrote them. I guess you should second.
Right.
There
Right.
might be a Robert's Rules of Order issue. I don't know. Okay, so it's approved. No one was against it. So thank you. Stan, really good job. Deeply
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have an update from the Fire Foundation, and I think it's the same dollar figure I gave you last month. It's $66,948.
Yep.
So that reflects all the money that came from the end of the year outreach drive, despite not having the crab feast. So we're up there at a very substantial number. And Chief White, I know you're going to have some issues you'd like to ask the Fire Foundation for. So I'm very confident that that dollar figure will allow us to do some nice things for the department. So we'll see how that goes over the next few months and such. The other thing to report from the Fire Foundation is kind of curious, a little bothersome, but did no damage, but is very interesting. And that is we think we've had an identity theft attempt on the Fire Foundation. This is reported by Jack Devlin at our last meeting. And it's surprising and a little disturbing, but I don't think there's been any damage done. But it came about in two forms. The first is that Experian notified Jack that someone tried to get a credit card on behalf of the Fire Foundation from a bank in Florida. And it was denied, so there was no credit card issued, but that attempt was made on behalf of the Fire Foundation. We don't know who did that, but Jack was being vigilant about that and is putting some extra, let's say, safeguards to make sure none of our accounts or our whatever is compromised. We don't have any credit cards in the Fire Foundation, so that's sort of a non-starter, but it was very sobering to hear that someone tried to apply for a credit card on behalf of the Fire Foundation. It wasn't us. The second thing that happened that also made it clear that someone was attempting to use the Fire Foundation nefariously was that Jack got a 1099-K form from Etsy for the Fire Foundation. Now, you probably know Etsy is something like eBay. It's an online vehicle that people sell things on. And apparently someone sold some stuff and they had $70,000 in sales, and they said it was on behalf of the Fire Foundation. So we got a 1099. Jack is in process of clearing that up with the IRS. Obviously, we did not sell anything on Etsy. That was not us. But once again, it tells us that someone was probably trying to use our name to do something. So those are both disturbing, but I don't think it has any material financial impact on us at this point. We didn't lose any money. There was no attempt to access our brokerage accounts or anything like that, but
Steve,
The
what question-
1099 aspect is interesting because
yeah.
you have to ask the question, where's the advantage? Where's the angle there? Right off the top of my head, as an investigator, I'm not coming up with it. For one thing, somebody who's committing a fraud like that is, unless they're Donald Trump, they're probably not filing taxes of any kind.
Yeah.
And 1099 would be a fairly strange instrument to be filing. So anyway, just
Yeah.
thinking out loud.
I guess one question, Steve, would be, is the taxpayer ID number visible in a way in which it sounds like maybe that could be related to both of these, where somebody's trying to take advantage?
Well,
That's
it
a
would be
good
on the
question.
1099. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it did. Now, the Fire Foundation is very transparent. If you go to our website, it has all of our nonprofit information. We're a 501(c). I think
Yeah.
there is a taxpayer ID number. So that is where someone could access information. And so that information is available. And I think it was on there. But
Yeah.
Jack felt that he would be able to clear it up with the IRS is not our issue.
Not your earnings.
Yeah, so everything's transparent, everything's on the internet. And if someone wants to hack us and use that information, that's pretty easily done, I suspect.
The IRS is going to be looking back at the payor tax ID.
So that's it for the Fire Foundation.
I have
Chief-
one thing for you, though,
Go ahead, Stan.
if I may. I just got this in an email the other day from Amazon Smile,
Uh-huh.
which is you can make a charitable contribution to an organization through the power of your purchases at Amazon. So apparently I am responsible for $25.28 going to the foundation. But
Thank you very much.
that said, $258.29 are credited to the foundation last year by Amazon. So my point is, are we pushing, is the foundation pushing that process of listing them as the recipient and garnering some additional pocket change?
Okay, let me give you a little background on that. Early on, I think it was about 2 years ago, maybe longer, Jack Devlin did sign up the Fire Foundation to get that perk from Amazon. So when people use their accounts like you did, a small donation would go to the Fire Foundation. It never added up to very much, but we did get some money from that. At the same time, when Jack was going to Jackson Hardware to solicit donations, Jackson Hardware looked at that and said, why are you pushing Amazon Prime? People should come to Jackson's, and I'm making a donation to the Fire Foundation. So we had a little bit of a political tension there.
Right.
And Jack felt that the Amazon Prime thing was not generating much. I don't know if it's still active. It must be if you did it this past year. But it's not
I
something
signed
we're
up for it a
actively
long
pushing.
time ago,
Yeah.
when I first got into the commission, and never gave it a second thought, and never knew until this arrived out of the blue that, 25 cents or $25 was credited there because of my purchases. What's interesting is, talking about not raising much money, $241,928,000 to charities in the US. So it's not a small operation.
Yeah, it's
And
potentially big.
our commercial account is set up with the Fire Foundation. So when I buy either for personal use or buy for the business through that Amazon account, Jack should be getting a contribution from Amazon from the Luckham Company via Amazon.
Okay, I'm going to talk to Jack about that and the Fire Foundation. I'll do a specific report back on how that may be benefiting the Fire Foundation. But I guess the only point that stuck out to me is how Jackson's was perturbed, and they had been very good supporters for us. They had donated in a couple of ways, the car fare they had and some other things. And so anyway, we don't want to create a tension between the local community of businesses that support the foundation and how Amazon Prime might undermine that. So I'll get back to you with a full report on Amazon Prime and how the foundation is interacting in that way. So thanks, Dan. Thanks for bringing that back up. I thought it was dormant, but it's obviously not.
Nope.
Okay, great. I have nothing on the historic subcommittee. Committee reports. Larry, anything for the Fire Commission today?
No, no, I haven't been busy at all.
Coffee cups and t-shirts.
MIZROCH. Thank you. Very nice.
I remade it. It's already
love
been
the
done.
I love the cup.
And I've got to, I've got one for, I think I mentioned to you, I made one for Tom Roach. Unfortunately, I left it in the machine when I went over to 58. Tom's retired,
Yeah.
retired chief for Marinwood, but he lives in the neighborhood. Tom's a great guy. And I'll either drop it by his house or drop it by 58. I also have one for Chris Gray. So
Okay, great. Very nice idea.
and actually, the other thing, I have one for Pete Martin also, and I've been meaning to drop it by his house. Haven't done that quite yet either.
Excellent. Thank you, Larry. Tom, anything to report today to the Fire Commission?
No, nothing from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nadine?
Nothing for me other than thank you. Now I know what is waiting for me across the street that I've been trying to track down. So I'm going to have to go over there and get it myself. But thank you. That's really
Fantastic.
nice.
The lobby is
Just to
open.
make sure I didn't misspell anything.
The lobby is open at the PSC, so that's a nice change. I think it's only been a couple of weeks now. Okay, Dave, anything to report today?
No update other than I'm still working with David Canelanato about the editorial calendar. So I think the ball is pretty much in David's court right now in terms of the editorial calendar, and if he wants to start executing on some of that ready-made content. So hopefully we can do that as we're getting into some of the different seasons that the content was appropriate for.
I thought your spreadsheet with all the different topics was terrific, and I see it as a structure to share more information throughout the year with the community. That's really nice work. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to
Deeply
do it.
appreciate it.
I agree. I appreciate that effort as well. And I know David's been assigned to work on a myriad of bunch of other things right now that have been somewhat time sensitive, but I'm going to circle back with him on this after our meeting and ensure that you guys have some dialogue and start actually posting some of those things that have already been designed by you. And hopefully we see something in the very near future.
Great. Yeah, the good news, we can start at any time because the content is appropriate for all the different seasons of the year.
Yeah, and given we've got daylight savings time coming up this weekend, it might be the perfect time to remind everyone about smoke detectors and going for the 10-year ones, or changing your battery if you don't have the 10-year smoke detector with the rollback of the, or roll forward of the clocks. We lose an hour this year or this month. So, yeah.
Excellent. Very good. Stan, anything you'd like to share with the Fire Commission today?
No, thank you. Everything's under control. I have my cup.
Thank you so much. I do think as we see the vaccines rolling out, things opening up a bit, going to less severe tiers, we may be able to start talking about when we might have a meeting live at the PSC. Are there people that think that even in a few months, if we were allowed, that would be more problematic for them and they might want to take the meeting from home? Any thoughts on that from people, or?
No, I think that, well, I'm old enough to be vaccinated and get my second this coming Saturday. So a month or two down the line, I certainly would be amenable to an in-person meeting. Whether well, the weather should be improving also, so there's the option of an outdoor meeting.
That's a good thought.
Mhm.
And I don't want to be premature. I don't want to box anybody into necessarily a live meeting, but I just want to hear people's feedback. Maybe hear from each commissioner about what they're thinking or how they're feeling about that sort of thing. I've also been vaccinated, so I'm starting to think more openly, but I want to be very sensitive to everyone's needs.
Yeah.
And until everyone feels good and feels safe, I don't think we should have a live meeting, but just feedback would be helpful. Any thoughts from anyone?
I've had both of mine. I'm ready.
Okay,
I would not want to do an in-person meeting until I received a vaccination.
yes, good point, Tom. Dave, you're also waiting for that vaccine?
Yeah, I feel the same as Tom.
Okay. Nadine, same way?
I'm open to an in-person as long as we're all masked and are within 6 feet apart, of course, and an outside area would be most preferable. But I also appreciate that we wait until everybody's vaccinated too. So either way works for me.
Okay, and I'm for that. I'm perfectly comfortable keeping this going for months at a time until everyone feels comfortable. But let's not make any decisions. Obviously, it's way too early. Okay, but we're feeling a little hopeful, so that's a good thing.
Hey, Chief White, do you know, have you heard anything on when Nadine and David and I would be getting shots? Since we're the under 65 crowd?
Actually, I have not gotten information on that just yet. I know some communities are looking at scheduling things. In fact, I just spoke with my mom in Canada, and they're finally getting to a point where at the end of this month, or excuse me, end of next month, they're looking at the 75 and olders to get, their vaccinations. We're well ahead of them, but I don't have additional information just yet on 16 to 64-year-olds. And that may have been shared today, but I was not sitting in on the operation area call. So that information could exist. If I do learn that they've provided some timeline for that, I'll circle back with an email to the group, but I don't have anything specifically just yet to speak on that.
I appreciate that. And just FYI, Alaska announced yesterday it was vaccinating everyone 16 and older.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
That's something.
and ironically, everyone in my tribe has already been vaccinated. And had I
Uh-huh.
been on the island, I would have been vaccinated a month or two ago.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway,
My niece is in Virginia. She has an appointment for Saturday. She's 50. So,
okay.
I mean, it's really coming out very quickly. It's very uneven across the country, though,
Mhm.
depending on where you're at, what county, what city.
And to be honest with you, I have concerns when they've introduced now yet a third option with Johnson & Johnson, which may be 66% effective from what I understand versus the 90 percentiles we see with Moderna and Pfizer. So it just, although from what I heard earlier today, the government is going to order a substantial amount of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as well, with the intent of further offering additional vaccines to probably that 16 to 64-year-old age range is my guess. So that's just a concern of mine. I don't know how well, vetted that concern is, but when you're only hearing that 2/3 of the vaccine recipients are responding well to it, then what happens with the other third? That's my concern. So I certainly like 9.5 out of 10 better than 6 or so out of 10.
Right. And I will say that it's very difficult to compare the three vaccines head to head. So you got Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J. They were all studied in phase 3 in different areas at different times. And the variants were coming out when the J&J was sort of at its height in the phase 3. So the fact that the J&J had almost 100% effectiveness against severe disease, hospitalization, or death, that's kind of what you want the vaccine to do. I mean, it was sort of magical when Moderna and Pfizer came out with 90% effective rate against getting infection, but really it's hard to compare them because they were done at different times. And I think the bottom line is you want to take it from a severe disease into one that's manageable. If it does that, that's a wonderful thing. So I'm pretty high on the J&J. I mean, the numbers don't look quite as fantastic as Moderna and Pfizer, but Moderna and Pfizer are hard to administer. And I think they're not going to be as perfect in the real world as they were in the study. So it's very difficult to compare them head to head because they weren't studied head to head.
Right, right.
Yeah. So that's a commentary, but I think the J&J is really terrific. If it prevents you from getting sick and hospitalized and dying, that's really good.
I certainly agree that it's better than not having any option at all. That's for sure.
Yeah. Just to compare it, if you look at Pneumovax, the vaccine for pneumococcus, what Pneumovax does is doesn't prevent you from getting pneumococcal infection. It prevents you from getting sepsis and meningitis. So that's what it really does. It keeps you from dying or having overwhelming sepsis. The zoster vaccine, the flu shots, I mean, all of those are the same sort of way. It mitigates the severity of the illness, but doesn't necessarily keep you from getting the illness. And in COVID, if you can mitigate the severity, that's really a good thing. So Tom, you don't have to put all that stuff in the minutes, but what I'm trying to say is I think the J&J is very, very effective in what it needs to do. And comparing them is almost impossible because they were studied at different times in different countries.
And see, this is why I'm a fire chief and not a Dr. Mizrak.
And I'm a doctor, but I've been retired for 10 years, so take it with a grain of salt.
No, that knowledge is still potent.
Beautiful. Chief, your report.
Sure.
What's happening?
Should I start with the report or should I start with the email and the certificate that we have for Commissioner Hill?
Yeah.
Or Council Member Hill, excuse me.
That's great.
I'll show the group this real quick. This is one that we have created for former Commissioner Hill, and it says, in recognition of Eli Hill, please accept our collective appreciation for your service and contributions to the Fire Commission, the San Rafael Fire Department, the community, and members of the Marin Fire Service. You are hereby recognized on Wednesday, March 10th. So I realize we're not recognizing him right now, but at least we've got the date set up for a commission date, and signed by myself and Dr. Mizrak. So I put the matting on it. I think that's a nice little touch compared to something that we're providing to our captains who were promoted several years ago. This is something that Chief Gray had wanted to extend to each of those members who became a company officer. And so retroactively, we found these frames and we're giving them to the captains one by one who would have received these when they were originally appointed. This individual was appointed, promoted to captain in December of 2011. I've so far handed out about 6 or 7 of these to the different company officers, but this framing is not quite as nice as the one that we're giving to the commissioner. So that's my personal opinion.
Very nice. Those are definitely retro and cool.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The next item I want to cover before I get to my report is, I'll just do it as quickly as I can, from a concerned member of the Upper Fremont location, where there had been considerable concern regarding our ability to get safely in and out and the amount of hazardous vegetation and other fuels that were in that area. So Mrs. DeWitt had, proffered an email to me a couple of days ago, and I did a little research with staff to find out what was taking place in the way of vegetation management and or efforts to create a turnaround for fire trucks in that area, which obviously there's some difficulty. It's a very narrow road and wasn't designed for larger vehicles. But what I did share with her, and I'll read her questions or concerns to you briefly, and I'll share my response. Hello, Chief White. At the last meeting of the Fire Commission, you responded to 1, the follow-up of hazardous brush removal at 55 Upper Fremont, and 2, the approval of a fire truck turnaround at the Y intersection with Upper Fremont, which in parentheses, the dirt road, and the private road belonging to 39 Upper Fremont, in place of the required delivery truck turnaround, which was required and approved for the development at 38 Upper Fremont on September 15, 2020. Please provide me with the current status of these 2 items. So I'm happy to report that our vegetation management specialist, Simon Wright, has been engaged with the owner in that location at 55 Upper Fremont. And in essence, this is what he shared on that subject. He said, we recently conducted another defensible space inspection on the property at 55 Upper Fremont. Following that inspection, staff has been in contact with the property owner of 55 Upper Fremont, who has been very cooperative and wants to continue making progress with the property owner, or excuse me, towards becoming a more fire resilient landscape. Staff has coordinated with Jorge, it could be Jorge or George's, depends on how you pronounce this, Jorge, George's Tree Service, to set up an Upper Fremont Chipper Day for March 31st.
Okay.
55 Upper Fremont has already signed up to participate in this Chipper Day, and our team will be conducting inspections on Upper Fremont this week to get the word out and sign up additional folks who may be interested in the Chipper Day. The property owner of 55 Upper Fremont and staff set a date to walk the property together, which I didn't include and share that with Ms. DeWitt. I didn't want anyone to be aware of when that date was, but it's actually upcoming pretty soon. In essence, the purpose was to prioritize the defensible space work that needs to be done and to go over what they should put into their debris piles for chipping purposes. We will continue, being the Vegetation Management or Prevention Bureau, will continue to work with the property owner of 55 Upper Fremont following the Chipper Day to ensure progress is made towards compliance. And my response to her regarding the question on the fire truck turnaround was that there was a turnaround requirement for 38 Upper Fremont contained in a paragraph of Resolution 20-18 back in September of 2020. This was in the Design and Environmental Review Findings section approved by the San Rafael Planning Commission on September 15th. However, it pertains to turnaround specifically for delivery and garbage trucks. And it was not a fire department condition or requirement. And it was suggested to her that she reach out to the new planning manager, Alicia Giudice or Giudice, depending on how you pronounce that, to get additional information. And so I don't know that was quite sufficient for her. And so she had this to say, and I think she really wanted to make sure that the commission heard this response. And I told her I would share the email with the group and also forward it to Dr. Mizrock. She says, hello, Chief White. Thank you for your response and your follow-up. The neighbors on the Hill will be very pleased to hear you have made progress with the removal of the fire fuel from 55 Fremont and have a coordinated chipper to assist the owner in this effort. Please keep us informed about the plan going forward for this property and when we can expect full compliance. I'm aware of the requirement for a garbage delivery truck turnaround at the Y intersection as part of the approval of 38 Upper Fremont in September of 2020. I am disappointed that the fire department did not require a fire truck turnaround at that time. However, this is the most logical place for a fire truck turnaround on Upper Fremont, and the owner of the private road, which is the upper part of the Y, is agreeable and willing to have her private property used for a fire truck turnaround, and Upper Fremont is a city-maintained street.
Yeah.
Given that fire equipment / vehicles were stuck and unable to get off the hill per the incident report after the fire in 2016 at 55 Upper Fremont, doesn't the city not only have a duty to protect their citizens during a wildfire, but also to protect their firefighters, which includes the ability to get off the hill as quickly as possible? It seems that the money spent to create a delivery truck turnaround is best used toward the additional improvement required to accommodate fire suppression equipment. So I'm asking how this can be changed to a fire truck turnaround and what the barriers to doing this? If not at this intersection, where do you propose a more suitable location? At the Fire Commission meeting, you talked about the city acquiring smaller firefighting equipment to access hillsides like Fremont and Upper Fremont. Could you please provide that information again so I can provide that information to residents on the Hill? One resident thought the city had actually gotten rid of the smaller vehicles. Thank you so much for assisting the owner of 55 Upper Fremont in complying with their vegetation management, which really affects the safety of everyone on this hill, as well as the safety of the entire city. Thanks again, Victoria DeWitt. And so she had requested Lindsay Lara, city clerk, to provide a copy to the commission. She was redirected back to me, and therefore I just shared it with you guys. And so with that, I want to personally go out, and it's very possible I'll bring the nearest engine company over to see whether or not a garbage truck slash fire truck size vehicle can actually do the turnaround there without having to create additional expense or requirements on the city, because garbage trucks and fire engines are actually comparable in size these days. And so I don't want to belabor the point, even though our truck 54 is actually a longer vehicle, that might be the truck that she was referring to more so than the engine. And I just want to again be sure that we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. That being said, I also want to ensure that I have looked at both areas that she referred to in her email to see which makes the most sense. Would it be the upper area near the citizens' private property, or would it be more down towards this lower area, which has already been set in the resolution as the identified location for the garbage truck and delivery truck turnaround? So just want to get a look at that before I give her a final response. So wanted to share that with you all in case you had any thoughts or input on that. And that was done at her request. And I figured now is a perfect time since these email threads were exchanged today.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on my experience up there, I think it's conceivable you could get a turnaround for a type 1, which I agree. I don't know what the wheelbase is of our type 1s or Marin Scavengers trucks, but my guess is that they're pretty comparable. The other major factor in turning a vehicle around is the overhang, not just the wheelbase. A truck, no way.
Yeah.
But my guess would be that in a fire incident up there, the type 6 would be a really useful resource and would go early because of its maneuverability. And my truck is pretty comparable in size to type 6. The type 6 probably has more overhang simply because of the body on the back, but it's tight up there. And she's right to be concerned. But again, there's some givens that are pretty hard to deal with. My guess would be that a turnaround at the Y is probably going to be the thing that everybody settles on.
Yeah.
Questions?
I have a few thoughts, and Stan, then I'll give it to you.
Sure.
First of all, I really appreciate that she's being an advocate for her neighborhood. It's beautiful, and she's an activist, and I think it's great. I think this is an area which requires as much mitigation ahead of time as possible with vegetation, trees, branches, anything that could be improved upon in advance is going to be a huge benefit should there be a fire up there. Should there be a fire up there, I think Larry's right. The type 6 is the way to go. Small vehicle, get up there with 500 gallons or whatever it's got. The frequency that it would be required is probably going to be exceedingly low every couple of years. I mean, who knows what kind of fire might be. And the other thing would be that I think it's really important for that neighborhood to understand a safe evacuation route if a fire gets out of hand. It's a very scary, steep, narrow area. And I think that everyone on board with understanding how they would get out in case of a big fire would be a very important educational angle to look into. So what construction to do, I don't know. That's a big deal for an infrequent issue, but yeah, anything that's feasible, great, but mitigation, education, escape routes, and using the type 6 when needed would be, definitely a good approach to a challenging issue. Stan, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, questions, actually. City of Santa Fe, Department of Public Works and Planning Commission, do we not have language that requires turnarounds as areas are developed? Or is this sort of a catch as catch can as we see a hillside sprout houses? It seems like something is not quite under a singular control, and maybe should be. Two, is there a definition for turnaround? When you take in an engine, is turning it around a 3-point turn, or is it a 360-degree turn? What is a turnaround? How big is a turnaround?
Well, I can comment on the turnaround and areas being developed. Yes, that is part of the zoning ordinance, the city of San Rafael. The situation on 55 Upper Fremont is that that's really, it's not a newly developed area. It's existing development, and what's going in at 38 would be classified as infill. And that area was developed to the extent that it has been initially way long time ago, before there were any such requirements. So that's where the difficulty comes. If this were something new and we were pushing a street up that hill for development purposes, yeah, the developer would be stuck with providing that. And there are standards for both street width and turnaround at the end of a cul-de-sac, for example. I don't, off the top of my head, know what they are, but that they are part of the zoning ordinance.
And my understanding about a turnaround is generally something that allows you to continue to drive is almost like a thorough one maneuver effort where you're making a U-turn of sorts, if you will, without having to do any 3-point turning or anything of that nature, no reversing, no stopping. You may slow, but you're creating a loop, if you will, an opportunity to continue to drive in just reverse direction.
Well, by definition, those are bigger than a 3-point turn.
Yes.
Yes.
We're talking garbage trucks. I have a cul-de-sac. I live on a cul-de-sac. And at the end, there is a bulb. But when Marin Sanitary is in there, it's a 3-point turn with the truck.
Right.
So, you know,
Right.
just ask.
Yeah, older development area, and the rules of today probably didn't apply, or Stan, I think you're in a hillside area, so
Yeah,
there is the standards tend to get different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Curious.
Chief, thank you for getting the chipper days involved and getting vegetation management involved. That is really the first big step, and that's very helpful. I appreciate you doing that.
I'll be honest, I can't take full credit. It's our vegetation management specialists. They're dialed in, and Quinn's got them working and looking at priorities and making sure they go where they're most needed. So as much as I like to take credit, I'm going to pass the thanks on to them.
That's great. We may need the Army Corps of Engineers for any turnaround.
Oh, boy, I hope not. All right. So I guess I'll move into the report now. And instead of giving you this long, lengthy, fairly long report, I'll try to give you the highlights if you guys would prefer.
Tom prefers it.
The Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and Vegetation Management, as of February 25th, Director Brown advised that the executive team's next meeting was going to center around values, goals, and objectives. And the Finance Committee started on their fiscal year 21-22 budget framework. And the chipper program, public education programs, and signage will all be funded via the $10 million core allocation that is still sitting in reserve. And I think I left in the report, yeah, I did. I brought some, or gave some photos, but I can let you see the sign itself and how it works. So you can get a look at this. This is probably about 20 by 24 inches. And this has the ability to slide in and out, so we can put new signage. Sorry, I thought I could pull it easily, but I can't. So, some information there, and then it can flip into being red flag warning today. So it's a very versatile sign.
Yeah.
pretty pricey, to be honest with you, but I think it's going to be a durable sign that should last for some time to come. So it's well worth the expense, in my opinion. And with that, messages like this can be inserted inside or changed as needed. So it's a pretty nice piece of equipment. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to order somewhere upwards of 16 initially, and then maybe expand that effort here in San Rafael and Marinwood accordingly. I won't tell you how much they cost, though. They're just so, all that to say. The planning and program manager interviews were actually held the day before yesterday, and I don't have the information on who was selected, but apparently that selection may have been made sometime earlier today. Director Brown also indicated they believe that person may start sometime in April. So with that, they're building their staff. They're starting to get, a little more launched as a executive board and a team with the ability to get a lot more work done. That includes also the environmental expertise that we talked about previously, with someone who's got an environmental and ecologically sound practices type background. And that individual is hopefully coming on board, pretty soon. And that same individual that's doing the work on behalf of the MWPA Executive Board will also be made available to each individual agency to view projects to ensure that they're CEQA compliant as well as environmentally conscientious projects, so that we don't run into some frustrations with those who have expertise in this area and we haven't done our due diligence. Well, this will be another resource for us to be able to do some checks and balances on launching our projects effectively and safely. I'm going to skip on to some other information regarding the chipper program. Fire Safe Marin, Rich Shortall, they've made some modification this year to how they're going to approach providing the chipper service. They're looking for increased participation this coming season, and they're going to try to chip a far greater amount of materials, if at all possible, with those chippings being possibly redistributed when possible. Now, that being said, we also had a demonstration recently on an air curtain burner and trying to see whether or not there was a lot of value in air curtain burners in our community. And that was a pretty good demonstration. They've got portable models and they've got the larger stationary models. And the price point is pretty reasonable considering how much you have to spend on taking chip materials over and disposing of it versus this being converted to ash completely. So something that we're
No, I got the email. We have my house. Yeah, we have something.
Agencies made,
I
look
just didn't get it up until now.
effort, but it's not 100% certain right now, being that we want to get another demo of an air curtain burner and see whether or not it meets the needs of everyone in the county as opposed to just a select few. So
Okay.
just wanted to share that.
Okay.
Marin will be divided into 4 equal zones, north, south, east, and
Okay,
west.
that
And there'll be
sounds
4
great. Thank
phases
you.
of operations for actual chipping starting in May. The phase 1 is May 17th through July 30th. Phase 2, August 16th through October 29th. And phase 3 is going to be
Yeah.
May through
Okay.
July of next year.
Okay, well,
Phase 4 will include everyone in phase 1 and the second service in phase 2. And they're looking to separate these by about 14 weeks or so after the first shipping service was provided. Just for the record, that's not my background. I want you guys to know. So
we'll see.
Just
Okay,
doing
thank
my
you,
office.
John. Talk to you at 6:30.
um,
Okay, bye.
they're looking at an average of 4 days a week of providing the chipper service. And so that's, I think, again, a increase in the service from previous efforts. And so more chipping opportunities over a wider area with hopefully more individuals participating in the chipper program. And there's going to be an increased marketing of the value of the chipper program. So we expect this is going to continue to be a very effective thing that Fire Safe Marin is doing. I think internally, San Rafael, we may be looking to offer our own chipper days in addition to theirs as well. There'll still be the equity lens on use of the chipper to ensure that those communities that have been underserved with chipper service in the past will get some opportunities for chippings, as well as the Firewise communities and others who have been accustomed to receiving the chipper days. COVID, I'm going to move right into that real quick. As everyone knows, we've moved now into the red tier, which is we were one of the first out of, I think, 5 counties in the state to actually move into the red tier as quickly as we're able to. As of yesterday or today, I think several more counties have been added to the red tier, including Alameda County and Santa Clara County and others. And so what that's allowed is increased business operations indoors. And that ranges anywhere from 10 to 50% capacity, depending on the work or the type of business you're in. And so as a few examples, hair salons, barbershops, nail salons, massage studios, piercing shops, they're all actually now able to reopen. Additional businesses allowed to serve customers indoors are now restaurants, places of worship. I won't call it a business, but gyms, fitness and dance, yoga studios, family entertainment centers, movie theaters, day camps, wineries, card rooms, campgrounds, and playgrounds. And then the resumption of youth, recreational, and sports activities are on the horizon here as well. So especially those that are primarily outdoors. I think the latter was prompted by some sort of lawsuit that may have been placed against Governor Gavin Newsom and the state because of the frustration that the sports teams were seeing watching professionals and some collegiate activities take place, but not providing the same criteria to the youth who have so much to lose by not being out and participating in some of these activities, especially those that help potentially put them on display for college scholarships or opportunities to play collegiate sports coming out of high school. So those things have resumed, but there are still some restrictions on some of the sports. Football, some of the other outdoor sports, baseball, they're okay. Basketball, volleyball, and wrestling, I think they're still working through some of those challenges with the close contact sports for the youth. Moving forward to vaccinations. This is a really important one. We know last time I gave the report, there had been a significant lull in the number of vaccinations received. And as a result, it made headlines that, things were delayed and in somewhat a disarray. And I think the state moved towards, at that point, trying to ensure that Kaiser or Blue Shield or someone else headed up the operation to ensure vaccinations were taking place. There was a collective effort, including some of the pharmacies, and now you see the super sites and distribution points of distribution opening up in a variety of locations, including the recent opening of something in Larkspur. That's for residents 65 and older. We had the point of distribution at the Marin Civic Center in San Rafael. That's been operational for now close to 2 months. And there's a plan for another Southern Marin pod, which is going to be run by Marin Health. So still more activity taking place, more opportunities for folks to receive vaccination. And I read recently, as you all probably did, that there's a anticipation that by the end of June, all adult population in Marin County should be vaccinated. As of last week, when I was generating this report, I think we were somewhere closer to 25% of the adult population actually receiving vaccination at that point, and that included first and or second doses. So as of just last week, we moved into phase 1B, and that included now everyone 65 years and older, education and child workers, food service and agriculture workers, and those other emergency workers who had not been already vaccinated. So we're getting closer to widespread vaccinations once those groups are actually wait a minute, I got something here that says persons ages 16 to 64 with pre-existing medical conditions will be eligible to receive the vaccine on March 15th. I don't know that that's entirely accurate. I put that in the report. I'm not sure. I got to go back and verify that. But if that's the case, Commissioner Weathers, to your point, your question, there's something available as early as next Monday. I put that in there, but I didn't recall putting that in there. But now that I did, I need to go back and verify it. So that would be huge. It would be really huge if they were looking to do this as soon as next week. But based on what I understood and what I had read, they were looking at upwards of 75 to 80% of the folks who were age 80 and older having been vaccinated at this point. And I didn't know what was the trigger point for those 65 and older for them to actually move towards doing everyone 64 and under. So I read that, and I'm pretty sure if I wrote it and put it in here, it's because there was something that I thought was valid and it needed to be included, but I need to go back and verify my source again. So
I think your source is still correct, as that's what I've been seeing also, but it's, you know, people with health challenges or, you know, there's got to be some sort of medical issue.
for
For
just
that.
an age group with medical issues, that might be what it actually was. And I said, I see pre-existing medical condition, but to the general conversation, I've got to share this with you. I know of some individuals who have no pre-existing medical conditions, who have been going to certain places of worship, who are doing distributions in Oakland as an example, and they've been getting the opportunity to get the vaccination at times. And I think it's those rare instances where they have excess vaccination or vaccine available, and instead of discarding it, they're actually providing it to individuals who may be there on a waiting or alternate list, and they're able to actually go and get the vaccination because they're there and they're waiting and there's an opportunity. In some instances, they're probably not getting it because everyone's showing up and they're exhausting their supply. But given the fact that that's happened on more than one occasion, because I just spoke to two people who were the beneficiaries of that, and they're in their early 50s, I think we're getting a lot closer to being able to see widespread vaccination, but I just don't know how well the vaccine distribution is taking place in Marin County and whether or not there's excess at the end of the day. And if they're giving the excess to individuals who may be on an alternate list, or are they discarding it because they can't refreeze or refrigerate this vaccine? So I don't have that information, but I can certainly do what I can to try to get some information. I'll have Quinn reach out to the county emergency manager to see what he can share about what's going on in that regard and what they anticipate in the way of everyone that's 16 to 64 and when they may be available to receive vaccine, even absent a pre-existing condition. So as of last week, almost 60,000 people in Marin have received at least one dose. So that goes along with what I mentioned earlier, about 25% of the population. Going to move towards emergency incidents. 3 weeks ago or so, there was a fire at an RV park and on West Francisco Boulevard. And I actually stopped to look in on what was going on here, you know, not during the incident, but maybe about an hour and a half later. And kind of troubling to see, you know, in that mobile home park, things so proximal to each other. And this could have really gotten bad pretty quickly because there's, what you can see here is not really telling the full story, but there's multiple units that move in right close proximity to each other. So I got to give the fire crews a lot of credit for getting there and doing their best to stop the spread of this fire pretty quickly. The American Red Cross showed up, provided some assistance to those that were displaced. And, you know, fortunately, I did stop there. I ended up having a conversation with an individual who was displaced, but he also knew of the family who was displaced, who just happened to not be there at the time. That family member reached out to me right after our graduation ceremony. I just happened to stop by the office here on Saturday the 20th, and he shared his concern that, you know, although American Red Cross was providing support, it was a limited duration support, and he and 4 others were now going to be homeless potentially within about a week or two. So we were able to provide additional assistance through the Community Action of Marin, Adopt a Family Marin, the Salvation Army, and Ritter. I'm not familiar with Ritter, but apparently all of these entities came together to try to provide some additional support to prevent this family from becoming a homeless family. So even though they were displaced, there's some other resources that were put in play to give them some assistance. So in all, total, 6 people were displaced. The other incident, vehicle into a building on 48 Woodland Ave. This vehicle struck a gas meter, which you can imagine that gets everyone's attention right away. But the great thing is there was no gas inside the building. The response was scaled back because although it got everyone's attention, this had already been shut off. So thankfully, let's see. And of course, you know, you've got those that like to take off from the scene of an incident because they were probably driving illegally or maybe wanted by the law. But guess what? The person that fled on foot was caught by PD. So it seems that San Rafael PD are pretty good at apprehending people that leave the scene or somehow or another take off. I don't know how they do it. I just wish the folks in Oakland were as good as the guys here in San Rafael getting the subjects and the suspects, because I tell you, so often in Oakland, they fled the scene, they don't get caught. And then there are repeat violators who potentially create a bigger problem somewhere down the road for somebody. So credit and hats off to San Rafael PD.
Well, this is a small community, or it's certainly much smaller than Oakland, and in an awful lot of cases, the individual involved is known to the police already. So we had a number of them where security cameras would catch a faint shot of somebody. We had behind the Sharon Williams paint store, we had an arson fire in a dumpster, and the PD knew right away who the guy was. I couldn't identify that it was whether it was male or female or what have you, but they knew right away who it was.
That's great. That's what you like to see, that level of engagement. I'll be honest with you, when I first got here, there was a arson incident in Marinwood over behind the market, and our BC had a conversation with the sheriff's office individual that responded, and he just seemed not so inspired to follow up on this, even though there was clearly a BMW SUV driving to the area and 5 minutes later driving from the area. It's like, wait a minute, you've got footage here that not very many people can refute. Why aren't they, really putting some effort and resources towards it? So I was hoping that wasn't going to be the reality I started to see here, because I'm familiar with that reality at times where I came from, but clearly SRPD is a cut above. So that's good. Last part of my reports, real briefly, are on February 20th, as I indicated earlier, we graduated 2 individuals from our Recruit Academy number 22. Firefighter Cole Roth is there shown in a photograph being sworn in. I forgot to have him put his hand up and take the oath that way. He did read the oath completely in its entirety, but I'm going to consider this a swear-in still, even though you didn't put the right hand up. So, and it only dawned on me right after we finished our sentences, and I thought, do I make him go through this over again? So, that being said, he's now working at Station 52, and he's part of 4 individuals we have that are on probation right now. 3 other individuals just finished their 6-month probation, and so they're moving forward. We're looking at getting another class in place, hopefully to launch maybe as early as May, if we're fortunate. I'll be doing interviews next week with Chief Windrum and others of potentially about 17 recruits. I'm just sharing this with you right now. It's probably going to be in next month's report, but we're really hoping to get a good group of individuals, even though our pool is a bit smaller than I would have liked. There's some challenges with that, and I understand what some of those could be, and so we're going to be planning on how we can make some adjustments moving forward to get a larger candidate pool and a more diverse candidate pool as well. Donations. On February 27th, the crews were actually training off of Lucas Valley Road, or excuse me, Smith Ranch Road, and one of the PTA and or Marinwood Board of Directors had reached out to me and said, hey, our school has got a bunch of donuts. We want to give them to San Rafael. Can we meet you or the crew somewhere and bring the donuts? And turns out they were not too far away from where the crews were. They were actually finishing up their training, so they drove right over. And as you can see by the big Kool-Aid smile on the firefighter's face, they had a whole bunch of tasty looking donuts that were passed out to everyone there. And I thought that was a great gesture on their part from Johnny Donuts. So wanted to include that as well. And that summarizes the report.
Fantastic. And also Captain Jason Schmidt retired.
Yep.
Yes, he did. I'll share something briefly about that, and I'll say this with all due respect for Captain Schmidt. He's got some frustrations as he's walked out of the organization. He did send me a letter and CC'd the city leadership about his concerns involving those frustrations. I spoke with him, for a little while and tried to offer him some different perspective on walking away from the organization in a positive mindset and not letting 1 or 2 situations kind of dominate and influence or affect how you view the totality of 26 plus years of service. Think about all the great people he's worked with over the years. Think about the great incidents and the difference he's made as a first responder in this community. Think about, how fortunate he was to be able to have this opportunity to serve. And again, not let one or two things mar overall the value of a 26-year career in this profession. And so he clearly is a little frustrated about some of the things, including mandatory overtime and or what he thought was a failed response on the part of fire department, including both Chief Gray and my leadership and city leadership as a whole. So I just, I don't want him to look and feel bitter about his experience here. But clearly he's a bit frustrated. And so he sent the letter. I'm going to actually reply back to that letter and still let him know he's a valued employee, retired or active, and that, we thank him for the things he's done. And we remain available to him if he ever wants to come and speak with us or visit. And so, but yes, Jason Schmidt, he retired after 26 years of service. We also have recently received an announcement from Captain Kevin Kelleher that his last day will be on the 25th. So there's some staffing changes taking places. This happens, as we know. You reach a point in time where you think, okay, I've done. It may be time. It's a younger person's job. Let me move on. Let me move aside, or for whatever reason, it's time. So with that.
Well, the reality of it is that it wasn't too many years ago that we had a department where more than 50% of the line personnel were 50 years old or older. Mm-hmm. And so we have gone through and up through Jason. And by the way, although he was gone and he moved about the day after he retired, he moved to Oregon. But I was able to get his cup to him.
Nice.
The turnover has been tremendous, and the great saving grace is that although we lose a tremendous amount of institutional memory with a lot of these guys, the young firefighter paramedics coming in my experience, working with them, just an extraordinary bunch of young fellas and gals.
Yeah,
really
that's the thing. We as we know, we're passing the torch on. That's inevitable. And the new wave of firefighter paramedics have a different skill set, a different set of values to some degree, and that's not always a bad thing. We were having this conversation with my battalion chiefs this morning about things that we thought were norms and were acceptable in the past, and how this generation of firefighters, for example, values free time more than we ever did. We probably worked far more than we should have, and they're valuing their free time, and the job is not all consuming the way it once was for other firefighters from previous generations. So, and again, it's not bad. It's just different. It's something. In fact, you might argue that it's better, but it's just different than what we're accustomed to. So. Yeah. We're adjusting to them. I don't know that they're adjusting to us as much as we seem to be adjusting to them, but that's part of the dance we do, right? Try to impart what we can, but also realize when we should press and when we should pull back. And I think that's what we're still figuring out.
Yeah. Work-life balance. I remember when I was in medical school, I took an ICU course where you were on call every other night. So you're on call all night, then you work the next day and you go home and you go to sleep, and the next day you come back and you're on call that night. Mm-hmm. And the challenge with that was you missed half the good cases. That's a joke, but let's just say that endings are hard. Endings are difficult.
Question
so I'm sorry to hear that Jason had some frustrations, but he did a great job and we wish him well. Yes. Okay, anyone else? Stan.
The fire chief of San Rafael was witnessed last week walking along 5th, seemingly wearing a soft recovery boot. Is there anything he'd like to share?
I've got a greater appreciation for those who slip and fall. I always wonder how did that happen, right? As if I've never fallen. Yeah, no, but honestly, I was coming down the stairs at home, and I've got a long set of wooden stairs that lead to my front door. and I was leaving on my way to go walk the marina with a friend at the Berkeley Marina, and I had my bag in my left hand along with some recyclables in my left hand, and in my right hand I had 2 jackets, both of which I intended to put on after I got to the outside into the car. And I didn't want to make, because there's so many steps, I didn't want to make 2 trips. So I think I'm gonna take all this stuff down in one fell swoop. Well, I've learned the hard way that you can make 1 bad trip or 2 good trips. And yeah, so I stepped on my jacket with my right foot because it slid off of my right hand, and my right leg went out in front of me, and my left went back under me because I was in a stepping motion, and I rolled the stairs about 4 or 5 stairs down before I was able to stop in that position. So I didn't break my toe, but they say I may have strained a cartilage or something in there. And so I had an ankle boot that was up, or excuse me, a calf boot for the first couple of weeks. And for the last week and a half, I've been wearing this ankle height boot. And just recently, I'm starting to feel like my toe is getting back to normal, because even as recent as Friday, I was like, I might need to call somebody and get some therapy because something's not right still. But over the weekend, it's improved. And so I feel a little better than I had. And I'm hoping by the end of this week, I can pull this thing off and be back at normal. So yeah, lesson learned. You know what? Make 2 trips.
Yeah, recovery.
Or at least hold the banister as I'm going down the stairs now, right?
Yeah.
That too.
Great. Anyone else? Anything before we close? Tom, thank you so much for taking minutes. I do appreciate it. And I wish everyone a happy rest of the month, and see you next month.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.